I was supposed to be bikepacking this weekend. A group of 17 Central Kentucky riders was headed to Virginia for a leisurely pedal down the New River Trail, a 100-mile out-and-back gravel rail trail. The weather was forecast to be warm but wet, and I was looking forward to a couple of days of riding and camping with friends. But here I am, not bikepacking, and that's a story for another day. Okay, I've been saying for a couple years now that I would do a basic setup video for a short bikepacking trip, and I just haven't managed to find the time to do that. So this weekend everything was packed and ready to go, and I guess now's as good a time as any to just walk you through what I normally take on a shortish bikepacking trip. This is my Salsa Timberjack. It's an extra small frame and a 27.5 wheel set. If you know me, you know that I prefer bikepacking on a hardtail most of the time. I've done a little bit on a gravel bike and some on a full suspension as well, and I really prefer rugged off-road routes. And so I find that a hardtail is the perfect combination of versatility and durability and stability while still being capable enough to tackle sort of any sort of terrain that I might throw at it. Like most bikepackers, I have learned a few tricks over years of tinkering with my setup, and I'm hoping that someone might benefit from these, especially a smaller rider struggling with packing a smaller bike like I have. In addition to some little hacks and tricks, I've come to two main conclusions when it comes to bikepacking gear. Let me tell you about those before I get into the specifics of my setup. Of course, these may not be the answer for everyone, but I'll explain why I think they work best for me. First, I've decided that the most important feature of bikepacking gear is waterproofness. It only takes one ride where an unexpected storm soaks all of your gear to make you really regret your life decisions. Bikepacking bags that are truly waterproof can be really expensive, but standard dry bags are a great alternative. I pay close attention to keeping things that can or might get wet, like my tent and rainfly, in a separate location from the things that really can't, like electronics, clothes, and sleeping bags. And second, I've gotten away from some of the bikepacking specific packs and bags in favor of a more modular setup. Since a lot of those front rolls and seat packs mount directly to the bike, I found that when I arrived at camp each night, I had to either unpack the contents of my bags bike side, potentially in the dark or rain, or I'd have to completely disassemble my whole rig to fully unmount the bags and then have to fuss with reattaching and readjusting it all over again in the morning. These days, I prefer a system of brackets and harnesses that I can mount dry bags to. Dry bags are less expensive, readily available, they're always waterproof, and with this setup, I can just undo a couple of clips, remove a bag, and leave that skeleton of the mounting system still attached to the bike, and it's ready to go in the morning. This also lets me do a lot of the packing, unpacking, and organizing inside my tent in the case of inclement weather. So I'll start with the things that are sort of always on my bike, or at least that I tend to leave on there because they're a pain to take off. So the rack's one. Also, in the cockpit area, there are a few things that I kind of have built into the bike that I think are just really handy for bike packing. I've got a tubeless repair kit in the end of my handlebars. I have a stem cap that is a direct mount for my Garmin computer, which is fantastic. It's always ready to go. A little bell, of course. And then I have a mount for a headlight as well. I also have mounts on my suspension fork. I don't tend to use those unless I'm really carrying a lot. I also have this great built-in tool that sits in my bottom bracket, and this is thanks to a friend that's an account executive for Live Giant, and this just has a built-in multi-tool and a chain breaker on the end, so that's always there, and I know that I'll have those tools. It just slips in and it attaches via a magnet into the bottom bracket. On the down tube, I have a water bottle cage mounted there because I've taken up my front triangle with a frame bag. And in that bottle cage, I mean, I can carry any number of things. It does tend to get dirty, so I don't usually carry water there. But a lot of our recent routes have been in bear country, so I carry a can of bear spray there. And then also mounted to that bottle cage is my Toe Peak Race Rocket hand pump. I do run tubeless setup, and I do carry a spare tube. I think that CO2 obviously is a little bit irrelevant when it comes to bike packing because it's meant to be a short-term solution, and once you run out of it, you're out of it. So a hand pump's really necessary. I do usually carry 1 or 2 CO2 canisters just in case it's getting dark and I'm in a pinch and I really need to inflate fast, but I rarely end up using those on bike packing trips. My top tube bag is made by Oveja Negra, and this is, I think I use this probably just like everybody uses it, mostly for snacks. And I also carry like my things that I need instant access to, so chapstick, sunglasses, an ID, cash, things like that. In my front triangle, I have this frame bag by Salsa, and it is fairly small because my frame is fairly small. However, I am able to keep a small repair kit in there with a spare tube, and then I use the rest of it for my water filtration and hydration stuff. This bag is not waterproof, so anything that goes in here has to be able to get wet and survive. This is a dirty bag, or what I use as a dirty bag. It's called CNOC, or it's by CNOC Outdoors, and I love this because it's very collapsible, very soft. It's much more compliant than the bags that come with a Sawyer squeeze. This is the Sawyer Micro, which actually I just got. I usually use the standard Sawyer, but it's so little, I thought I'd give it a try, and it does the same thing. These 2 items, I just use this to fill from a stream or water source, and then the Sawyer just screws directly onto it. And you can drink from this, of course, or you can squeeze the contents into a water bottle, for example. But this is my favorite device. This is very inexpensive. I want to say it's called the Fast Fill, maybe, kit from Sawyer, and I might have that wrong, but I'll try to look up a link to it and put it in the description. But that just replaces the bottle cap top on the Sawyer filter, and this way you can actually connect this directly into your hydration hose and backfill a bladder. This is just a 2-liter hydration bladder by Hydropack, and what I've done here is I've used one of these quick disconnect kits to put a break in the line. And so what I can do is stuff this into my frame bag. That can be kind of tough to do when it's full, and so I might stuff it in there empty, and then I can run the hose without all the bite valve and whatnot on the end through the hole here and close that up. And using this kit, I can now collect water from a stream or a waterfall and just quick connect my filter and backfill my bladder from there. And that's really nice. You can see this thing getting fatter, but I don't have to take that water bladder in and out. So that's really a genius idea, and I don't know why everybody doesn't use this. So then removing my filtration kit from there, I can put the bite valve back on. This is another one of my favorite little hacks, is that I put just a retractable lanyard on here, like for a badge, and then this will attach to one of my front bags, and that way I can just pull the bite valve back to get a drink and let it go, and I don't have to worry about sort of like, you know, tucking it somewhere while I'm riding. Last year, I made the difficult and controversial decision to put a rack on the back of this bike after several years of just battling with my equipment and having a really hard time keeping things off of the rear tire just due to the size of the bike and my desire to use my dropper post. I finally decided something had to sit between my rear luggage and my rear wheel. And so I threw this rack on the back. This is by Thule, and I chose it because it mounts directly to the seat stays, and that way it will fit a variety of bikes, and it doesn't at all clamp onto the seat tube, so I have full use of my dropper and I don't have to worry at all about where the rack is sitting. I hate the fact that I have a rack on a mountain bike, but the fact of the matter is it works really well. And after riding it this way a couple times, I find I'm still able to get up climbs, I can still ride technical stuff, and I just don't have to worry about what's back here. So love it or hate it, it works. If you're a small person like me, it's worth considering. It adds a couple pounds of weight, but the stability is generally worth it. Any dry bag obviously would do back here, but I like the top load feature of this one. It just seems like it makes it easier to access things. So this is where I keep anything that could get wet, that won't be damaged by getting wet. So this has my tent, which is a big Agnes copper spur UL1 bikepacking tent. I have a pair of flip-flops for camp. I have a small toiletry kit. It's just toothbrush, toothpaste, sunscreen, bug spray, deodorant, and my inflatable sleeping mat, which is a big Agnes Q-Core. I do have an inflatable pillow in here for this trip because I wasn't going to wear a hip pack. I usually use my hip pack as a pillow, so take it or leave it with the inflatable pillows sometimes. I really like this bag because it has a bleeder valve to let the air out as you squash it down. And then this one just closes on the ends. And this tends to be stuff that I don't really access very often. So I just put this on the little rack. And then these Volley strap rack straps are just absolutely fantastic. They clip so easily to the rack itself. But it's so nice, it lets me use my dropper and there's no interference at all, especially if I'm not wearing a hip pack like I would have this weekend, then there's nothing even like contacting that really at all. So on the front of my bike, again, coming back to the modular setup that I've decided that I like so much better, this is a front loader by Oveja Negra, and it's just a soft harness, well, soft-ish harness, that attaches directly to the front of the bike. So this just straps on to the handlebar. Really simple. And then it has a strap that goes around the head tube, so I just push my cables up a little bit and put this around the head tube. So then any dry bag will work in this front loader. My dry bag is also by Salsa, and the main reason that I like this one is because it's 15 liters, but it's long and skinny. And sometimes when you just buy a dry bag at an outdoor store, they tend to be kind of fat. And again, being that it's a small frame bike, I didn't want anything to interfere with the front wheel. So I like that kind of long, skinny dimension. It also has some loops on it, which is fantastic for keeping it centered in the front loader using these straps. So what I keep in here is things that absolutely do not want to get wet. So my sleeping bag, this one for this weekend was just like a 55-degree bag, so a really light one. And then any changes of clothes that I might take, like a beanie for sleeping in. I usually take a little microfiber cloth just for cleaning up at camp or drying things off that might get wet. A buff for keeping sun off of my neck. On this trip, I was taking a cook kit, which I'm honestly kind of lazy and I tend to not want to take a cook kit. And then I'm also going to put just my rain jacket. Now, obviously, if this comes out and does get wet, then I would either just strap it on top of my rear luggage or put it back in with the tent and whatnot so it doesn't go in here wet. But for now, it can go in there. The other cool thing about this bag is that since it's double-ended, I can put things that I might need to access on the ends and just be able to unroll them, grab that thing out. Things like maybe an extra pair of gloves if it's going to be raining or cold, you know, a couple extra layers. It's not very evenly packed. That wasn't very realistic. But this just goes straight on the front. And again, I like this, got this little pass-through loop, which helps keep it stable. But even if you just were using a standard dry bag that didn't have these, you know, you just cinch it down tight enough so that it doesn't go anywhere. But I love this design so much more. In the beginning, I had some, you know, pretty pricey, fancy bike packing bags, and they would attach in much the same manner, but then at night you had to actually undo them from the bike, take the entire thing off, and like re-rig it tomorrow morning. So I might get to camp and only take the rear bag off because that's got my tent and my sleeping pad in it, get that set up, and then if it's raining or miserable, then you just grab this bag, throw it inside the tent, climb in, and do the rest of it from in there. These little bags are really handy too. These are by Moose Treks, and I've seen that these have gotten quite popular, it seems like. But these are little feed bags, or chuck bags, I think is what most people call them, and they attach directly to the bar as well. They have these handy little mesh pockets, and so I'll tend to put like, I've got a can of electrolyte tabs and some hand sanitizer and another chapstick, because you can never have too much chapstick. So in these, I keep a bottle for water with electrolytes on one side, and then usually on the other side, I like to carry a Nalgene. And these are handy for a couple of different reasons. Obviously, it's extra water storage if you need it. If you don't, you can always put other stuff in there, snacks or trash or whatever. I like to have kind of a separate water thing to fill before we reach camp, so that I have like reliable cooking water source if I'm cooking. And then the other thing is, in chilly weather, it's nice to boil water, put it in here, and stash this in the bottom of your sleeping bag. That's a really good kind of hack for staying warmer, and it works really well. If none of those things apply, if I'm not cooking and I'm not needing a whole lot of extra water and it's not cold, then I might forego that. Maybe an extra bottle of electrolyte water or something there. This is my little electronics kit, and this definitely can't get wet. So I put it in its own little dry bag. This is just a tiny little 1 liter dry bag. And in here I've got my headlamp, I've got spare batteries, I have a power bank for charging with cables for my computer, my phone, my watch, my GoPro, and then things like allergy meds and a lighter and some matches and a little first aid kit, spare GoPro batteries, and that all stashes in here. And then this kind of goes wherever I can fit it, because it's already in its own waterproof container. So that just brings us to kind of the final few things. Again, I've got my hydration hose that I've also got a whistle on there, I guess, just for safety. And this is now ready to attach somewhere on the front of the bike. A little rear red flashing light and a headlight if you're going through tunnels, if you're going to ride after dark, if you're going to ride on road sections during your route, then it's nice to have that. And it just snaps into place on my bar. And this one, have a little mount on the back there. I like to carry a few extra carabiners because they're super handy. If I have maybe a bag of trash after camp, or something that just needs to air out, then that I can just attach to the rear or to the front. So those are very handy to have. And then my bike computer is a Garmin 1030 Plus. It is the most ridiculous and most expensive of the Garmin computers, but I love the 24-hour battery life. I love the live track feature that I can send to my friends and family, and I love the big display for bike packing. The maps are really handy when you don't know where you are. It's a little overkill on my trail bike, so I don't love the size then when I'm just day riding, but for bike packing, it's really been very nice. So I don't have any complaints, and of course that snaps into the stem cap mount and it's ready to go. Anyway, leave me questions if you have them. I'm sorry that this took so long. I would tell you that there's going to be more, but realistically, it's probably going to take a while. Anyway, thanks again, and see you next time, whenever that may be. Really know what the resupply. Apparently the truck thought I needed to do that part over. It's the universe's way of telling me that was no good.